Welcome to the Adapt or Die podcast. This podcast explores ideas related to self-growth, finding meaning, and living a more fulfilled lifestyle. It's your host, with the most, Armel Tala.
And it's your host, on the low, Ben Smith. We're two college students on our own path of lifelong learning with the hope that you will join us in our journey. And now, it's time for the next episode of
The Adapt or Die podcast. Welcome back to a long series, a month's worth of 12 rules for life. Ben, why did we decide to do it this long? People are on the third episode now, probably like, dude, is this going to be over with?
Simply put, it is that good of a book. I think this episode might be my favorite of as far as the topics we're covering. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like the lessons he teaches and the way he teaches them are different in a good way from any lessons I've ever heard.
And I just want to clarify, we don't endorse all the ideas that he has, especially on the last part, chapter 11 specifically, but they're just great. You always have to keep your mind open and listen. And like he said, one of his rules is, one of the rules are actually going over today is, you can learn something from anyone you're talking to. So keep that in mind. But you guys, please like, subscribe, share with your friends, comment below what you guys think. What rule has been your favorite so far? What rule was your favorite after we finished this episode? But enough talking. Let's begin. Number 7, pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient.
So the first thing we need to give a quick reminder of is that we're going to be talking a lot about religious stories, specifically the Bible, because that's Peterson's background. Don't take these stories literally as in literal truth or even analyze them from a religious standpoint. He's going to analyze them from a very narrative point of view, but don't let that affect your understanding of it. So don't take it literally. Don't even take it religiously if you are a Christian or otherwise. Whether these things actually happened and how you interpret them at church is not necessarily what he's going for in this analyzation.
So that raises us to the question, what is expedience? What is expedient? What is it? Why do we choose expediency? Well, again, kind of back to the biblical references, because life is suffering, or just back to more philosophical, really, because life is suffering and we choose pleasure over wanting to just sit through that suffering. And it makes sense because if things are going to be tragic and you're suffering in the world, you'd rather be, chasing something pleasurable to make that suffering more bearable, right? And so we follow our impulses, we live in the moment, and we do what is expedient. So, but this means at times that you're lying, you're cheating, you're stealing, deceiving, manipulating, and all of that in the hopes that you don't get caught, obviously. And in an ultimately meaningless universe, what possible difference could this make, right? So if everything is suffering, why does it matter if I lie, cheat, steal, and cause other harm to people? We're all suffering, right? But we'll go into that more. But so one of the reasons why this is kind of built into us is because gratifying our desires like hunger, thirst, and sex allowed us to procreate and proliferate our species, our own existence through time. And we're not complex. We weren't complex enough to understand how to utilize delayed gratification. But there is an alternative. And like I mentioned, that is delayed gratification. That is sacrificing. And in the Old Testament, this is ridiculed. The Old Testament is ridiculed with a bunch of sacrifice with animals, crops, and even children. It's a bit crazy. But something I really wanted to highlight was our ancestors figured out we can give up something of value in the present to gain greater value in the future. Let me repeat that. We can give up something of value in the present to gain greater value in the future. So it's like we're bargaining with the future. So the higher quality, the higher quality of the sacrifice we make in the present, the more we will gain in the future. And this explains a deep pragmatic truth in our society. Like, successful individuals are those who delay gratification. You've all heard the stories of, didn't spend any money on anything. They, only would make sure they would get the work in and everything like that. They would, like Kevin Durant, he would give up going out to parties and all that to want to be one of the best basketball players, right? Love my man KD. So, however, this is fun. Like I mentioned, This fundamentally opposes our natural desires to want to fulfill expedient things, to just want those, those desires right away to gratify that.
And so, let's look at one thing that's really interesting is that not all sacrifices are created equal. And what really shows this very well is the story of Cain and Abel. If you're familiar with the Bible, you know this. If you're not, that's okay too. I'm going to explain it real quickly. Cain and Abel were they were two brothers. They were the offspring of Adam and Eve, and they were both working. I guess they were tolling the fields, right, trying to make a living. And God asked them to sacrifice something of value to Him. Abel chose to sacrifice his flock of he was a shepherd, and then Cain chose to sacrifice his crops. He was a farmer. God rejected Abel's sacrifice. Sorry, he rejected Cain's sacrifice, but accepted Abel's sacrifice, and it wasn't really clear why. And this kind of gets at a root thing of not all sacrifices are created equal, and oftentimes we don't understand why. And you see this in real life as well. A lot of times people will sacrifice a lot, and they won't actually get the outcome that they were looking for. And so that's manifest as the story of Cain and Abel goes, right? And a further step in this is that as a result of Cain's sacrifices being rejected by God, he actually took revenge on his brother and revenge on God by torturing his brother and killing him because he was so vengeful and angry that his sacrifice was not accepted, but his brother's was, and there was no clear reason why that was true. And so the lesson there is that not all sacrifices are created equal, and when we are not rewarded for our sacrifice, when we feel we should have been, that produces evil and that produces vengefulness and deceit and all those other things. Now, one idea of what you should be sacrificing is you should sacrifice what you love most. And this is seen in the story of Abraham and Isaac. So Abraham, he's an old figure. You probably heard of him, even if you haven't heard of the Bible, like most people, right? But he wanted kids for a very long time, and God made him wait. I think it was about 25 years before he could have his first son, Isaac. And once he had his son, God actually asked him to hike to the top of a mountain and sacrifice his son. And just to give context, Abraham wanted a son so bad. That was probably his one true wish in life, right? God asked him to sacrifice what he loved best, his son Isaac, at the top of a mountain by his own hand as well. And so, as he's at the top of the mountain, before he's about to kill his own son, an angel actually stops Abraham and he allows Abraham to substitute a goat with the claim that because God saw that Abraham's heart was true, he was willing to sacrifice what he loved best, he could actually keep his son. And from Abraham, his line, that is the line of people that became the Jews, and that was God's chosen people through his line eventually. So the moral of that story is that to get what you truly want, maybe you actually have to sacrifice what you love best, and Cain wasn't sacrificing what he loved best. And one quote that I like from Peterson is, "It's time to let go. It might even be time to sacrifice what you love best so you can become what you might become instead of staying who you are." Now, those are all interesting ideas. One super interesting idea is shifting to a little bit of a tangent is what Peterson calls confronting your shadow. So just as a reminder, we all have untold evil in the depths of our souls. We are capable of who knows what, right? And it's very difficult to face that. And so before I get into where this is relevant, it's also relevant to mention the story of Jesus. You've all heard Jesus, but there's two relevant stories in particular. He spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert with Satan. And Satan continually tempted him with various temptations of power, food, basically gratifying instant desires. And then the other more general story is the story of how Jesus died on the cross. He went down to hell for 3 days, defeated Satan, and then rose again. Okay. And so kind of going back to the whole evil thing, this idea is so profound to me. To be someone who is good, to be someone who is powerful and asserts himself in the world, you have to confront your evil. Like Jesus, you have to go to hell for 3 days. You have to fight the evil, defeat it, and then you will rise again. And what that means more literally in our society and daily basis is that you need to understand the depth of your depravity, the depth of the capability of how much evil you can have, and then also understand that a part of you would actually like to do those things. And once you understand those things, then you have to choose not to do them. That is what makes someone good. That is what makes someone honorable. Okay. And so in the end, sorry, that was like a long tangent. What Jordan Peterson is getting at through these stories, I guess this particular story with Jesus, is that you need to live your life like Jesus to find ultimate meaning, which means you need to confront evil, confront Satan, recognize your unimaginable capability for evil, and choose the ultimate sacrificial life, which is the rejection of immediate gratification and the destruction of evil. It is thought that with this type of sacrifice, you can create "quote unquote" heaven on earth.
Wow. I'm not even a very religious person, and
I hope I explained that well.
you did. You did very well. I'm not a religious person, and just reading that chapter and like hearing it again from Ben, very just it hits you. It hits you. But what does it mean to pursue something that is meaningful? What does it mean to pursue meaning and not expedience? It depends on where you aim, and we'll go further on this on the next rule. But Jordan Peterson says, "To the best of my ability, I will act in a manner that leads to the elevation of unnecessary pain and suffering. I will make the world a better place." So that's very vague. Again, we'll go deeper what it means for you to aim what is meaningful, but think in the context of maybe not the entire world, but your surrounding a better place. And it's really, I could give you guys what I think, but I think it's better that I just really just tell you exactly what Jordan Peterson says because I can't put it into any better words. Expedience is following the blind impulse. It's short-term gain, it's narrow and selfish. It lies in what gets in the it lies to get in its way. It lies to get its way. It takes nothing into account. It's immature and irresponsible. If you act properly, your actions will allow you to psychologically integrate it now and tomorrow and into the future while you benefit yourself, your family, and the broader world around you. Everything will stack up in a line along a single axis. Everything will come together. This produces a maximum meaning. Meaning trumps expedience. Meaning gratifies all impulses now and forever. That's why we can detect it, right? So figuring out what is meaningful to you will allow you to make it much easier to have those delayed gratification and to understand. Again, very vague into what is actually meaningful, but it is something that we all have to pursue. And to close it off, meaning is the way, the path of life more abundant, the place you live when you are guided by love and speaking truth, and when nothing you want or could possibly want takes anything precedence over precisely that. Do what is meaningful, not what is expedient. So, in order to live a meaningful life, though, you have to do one thing, and that is tell the truth. Rule number 8 is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. I like how he added,
Yeah, I like yeah, that.
just or at least don't lie. Like,
Side note, that's actually a really important tangent he mentions in one of his lecture. Like he like thought about that long and hard, whether to say tell the truth only or to add at least don't lie. But keep going. Sorry.
gotta watch that. But so we often lie to manipulate reality to get what we want. That's what we're doing when we lie. And some examples might be to ensure that everyone likes you, so you want to say the right thing even though you know you're lying. To appear competent, right? You won't admit that you don't know. To minimize immediate conflict, you lie because well, it might make them upset if they know the truth, but we'll go into why that's important to still tell the truth. But these are life lies. And Sigmund Freud, the person who came up with this idea, he describes life lies as attempting to manipulate reality with perception, thought, and action so that only some narrowly desired and predefined outcome is allowed to exist. And so that means you believe that your current knowledge is sufficient to define what is good, unquestionably far into the future, and reality would be unbearable if it was left to its own device. So you lie.
And so, as Mel put, like you're trying to manipulate reality to conform to your idea of what reality should be, right? Because in your mind, somehow you can control reality, and that is ultimately better for everyone if you can manipulate it properly. But this doesn't actually make any sense because you don't have that much information. You actually are not that great. You know next to nothing. And the way you know that is because if you knew a little bit, if you knew everything you should know, your life wouldn't be as crappy and full of suffering as it
Wait,
is.
say that again, because that hit me when I read it.
If you knew everything you needed to know, your life wouldn't be full of as much suffering as it is. Um, so the point there, though, is that you lying is your idea of how to manipulate reality for the better, but that is just a false idea that is not true. And one easy example, this is actually a little bit of a tangent, but one example he gives is that an 18-year-old decides she wants to retire at age 52, and that goal carries with her throughout her life, and she doesn't even know why she made that goal when she was 18, but now she knows that she wants to retire at age 52, and that's something that she doesn't even want anymore after 22 or 25 or whatever. And we said this before, at least last episode. A naively formulated goal transmutes with time into the sinister form of a life lie. So I guess the ultimate point that I'm trying to make here with the life lies and manipulating reality is that life lies is attempting to conform your reality to your expectation of how it should be instead of the other way around. Conforming yourself to reality, right? Instead of conforming reality to you.
Deep. But lying is a sin, right? I mean, there's obviously the reason why we just said you're trying to uh create reality yourself. You're trying to mold it and shape it when that's not true. You can't do that. But to add on top of that, it's also a sin if you're a biblical religious person, right? And there's two types of sins actually. There's the sin of omission and the sin of commission. So the sin of omission is letting something bad happen even though you could stop it. And the sin of commission is, saying something you know to be false. But omission in Jordan Peterson's mind is more dangerous and it makes sense. And this is like refusing to stand up for yourself and just generally doing what is right. And so, incrementally, every time you refuse to stop bad things from happening, you're weakening your ability to stand up against those things in the future. And so, one day when something does actually need to be stopped or you need to speak up, you'll be a little bit timid because you've never spoken up before. And you never spoken up when it was a less, I guess, crucial or less bigger, not as big of a problem. And to kind of show how this really does compound is this is exactly what the German guards did, and that committed the atrocities at like death camps. And so they incrementally let things get further and further. First it was take people to certain places, remove them from their family. I don't need to go into details. You guys understand. And then eventually it became to them killing and torturing innocent people. And this is called willful blindness. And willful blindness is the refusal to know something that could be done. It's a refusal to omit the knocking sound that means someone's at the door. And so this was an extreme example, but some other ones you can think of in your life personally is like whenever you let a friend say something that's out of pocket, out of hand, and at first, they make that little comment, you let it slide, but you reinforce them because you didn't say anything. They think, oh, they don't care. I said that. Let me see how far I can push it, right? And we'll talk about this more about actually why we are like that, or maybe we went over it. But there is some rules. He talks about like we always try to test the edge. It was
Hmm.
actually about
Dominance.
kid. I
I
think
think it
it's
was in the kids one
yeah, it was in a
mostly. Yeah.
kids one. But as humans, like we learn by pushing to the edge, and then we get reinforced by society. Society tells us, "Hey, you can't do that," and you're like, "Okay, I understand. I shouldn't do that, right?" And that's the idea you have to think when you're dealing with that friend is if you keep letting them say those things, but you never say something, you're not standing up for yourself. They're gonna keep doing it because you never put a barrier. But when something bad happens, there's two voices you can have. There's a voice of truth and authenticity, and it's like I have something to learn from this, right? So you have a good mindset, but the other voice is untruth and inauthenticity, and you say something like the world is unfair, people are jealous, too stupid to understand, and it's difficult for and it is the fault of something or someone else.
Now, one thing you need to be very careful of is don't fall in love with reason. He makes this very clear. Reason is actually symbolically represented by Lucifer. So another way to say that is that uh, the spirit of reason is actually satanic. And the reason he puts is great. It is the greatest temptation of the rational faculty to glorify its own capacity and its own productions, and to claim that in the face of its theories, nothing transcendent or outside its domain need exist. Okay? So it's the idea that you know everything that you need to know and nothing else important or relevant exists that you should be trying to find out. This is the spirit of totalitarianism. This is the spirit, this is the idea that if we implement a certain set of ideas, that we can achieve utopia because there is no other information that could create a perfect world. We have all the information that we need. This is a fallacy, though. Believing that you know everything, that leads to stagnation, that leads to tyranny, that leads to things like what happened in the USSR, where they killed millions, actually tens of millions of their own people, right? So, what saves you against this idea, the spirit of reason, is the willingness to learn from what you don't know. You need to safely, as we talked about, place one foot in order and one foot in chaos and discover new information that can make the world a better place and give back to society, uh, because that is your job to go forth rightly into the world and bring about new information that can improve the lives of others.
And the truth, it's painful. It's honestly something. The reason why we avoid telling the truth at times is because we understand the pain that's behind it. But so, but the pain is truthful for a good reason and is newly. So the way to think about this, sorry, I keep stumbling on my words, is new staggering information is transformative. You're taken aback by it, and you found truth, but a small piece of you died to accept it. And I really want to repeat that. You found truth, but a small piece of you died to accept it. The truth will set you free, but it burns away everything unnecessary and not true in its wake. So all falsehoods die in their place when the truth is revealed. To really like to me, that's just so it's such an interesting way to put it because really when you are telling the truth, you have to shed things that you thought you knew to tie it back to what Ben was saying. If you think you know everything, then there cannot be any more truth in what you know. But when you are willing to accept the truth, you allow yourself to continue to learn. And so all ideas you have, if they're false, they must die when the truth is revealed to you. And it is only by letting go, sacrificing what you want most that you discover the truth. Let me repeat that. It is only by letting go, sacrificing what you want most that you discover the truth. And where do we start in finding the truth?
Yeah, so how do we actually find truth? Well, a really great place to start counterintuitively is culture. Um, Unless you have a very good reason to do so, Peterson states, it's reasonable to do what people have always done. So some simple examples is get educated, find love, have a family, basic things that people have always done. Why? Because generations upon generations upon generations, I'm talking thousands, maybe even millions, have gone through life and passed down knowledge, and that is transmuted, or it has passed down through generations to form what we call culture. Of course, it's morphing and changing, but a lot of that knowledge is still good. However, one thing is that you need to be awake. You need to be cautious of that cultural knowledge. Why? Well, while beneficial, culture is often oppressive, and in the sense that it makes you conform to the ideas of past generations, right? But sometimes that knowledge is wrong, and sometimes it falls out of date as well. So you need to be vigilant in your ability to discern what is good in the moment and what may have fallen out of date. A good kind of symbolic, how do I say this? A good symbolism for this is culture is the tyrannical father that imposes certain routine and order on society, and the individual is the independent son. It is the hero who goes forth into the chaos and brings information that allows the kingdom to become whole and right and good again. Okay, so you also need to do this on a familial level and an individual level as well. So listen to your parents, but not all of their knowledge is perfect. Do what you think, like follow your goals, but don't let that blind you to what you could be. Don't allow that to not let you pivot.
And you pull the truth from the past because obviously they must have found some good reasons to why. And like Ben said, you don't accept everything, you have to think it through. But feel the truth out as well, right? Listen to your consciousness. A lot of times we have those gut feelings, and most of the times they tell you what is right and what is wrong. So you want to listen to that little voice in your head because most of the time it will actually be a good indicator of what you should and shouldn't do. So your consciousness gives you valuable insights into what your truth is. We often convince ourselves of life lies, but you can always trace back to the first instance when something felt wrong and destructive. And so again, like that's following your feelings and thinking back, like when did I first feel awkward or weird about a certain thought or thought process that I had about something. Did you have something? Oh, boy, I just wanted a burp. But
No cap.
so this goes back to what we talked about. What do you aim for, right? And so to live truthfully, to live in the truth, you need to aim. You need to have an ambition and an aim, and that aim would be better. That ambition will be. Again, I'm trying to frame this in the right way, but so to live in the truth, you should have an aim and an ambition, right? And that aim and ambition should be focused on your development of character and ability because these cannot be taken away from you. Wealth, status, beauty, intelligence, all of that actually I don't think intelligence can be taken away from you or knowledge.
I guess knowledge not necessarily, but I mean you can have dementia, Alzheimer's. There's always someone more intelligent than you. It's a breakable paradigm.
Okay, okay, I see where it says there. But yeah, so things like wealth, status, and and status related to whatever intelligence you feel, that can all be taken away from you, right? So you want to focus on your character and your ability and your abilities because when you have those instilled in you, no matter where you put, no matter no matter what situation you are in life, you can always grow and rebound from that, right? But to end it off, I really want to kind of quote him on some things he says. And Jordan Peterson says, if your life is not what it could be, try telling the truth. If you cling desperately to an ideology or wallow in nihilism, try telling the truth. If you feel weak and rejected and desperate and confused, try telling the truth. In paradise, everyone speaks the truth. That is what makes it paradise. Let me repeat that because that one was like, I was like, it's so simple, but it's true. In paradise, everyone speaks the truth. That is what makes it paradise. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
So, going on to our final rule, rule number 9. It's been a long episode, but stick with us. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something that you don't. So, to start off with, we're going to go over humility. A lot of us think of humility or being humble in certain ways, but I think he frames humility in a really great light. Humility is accepting that you do not have enough information. Um, yeah, it's just you do not have enough information. And like I said earlier, if you did have enough information about life, then your life would be much more than what it is. You would not suffer existentially. You would not have such tragedy. You would be able to not only live a perfect life yourself, but make that happen for the lives of others around you. As such, you should be grateful and in search of any information that can make your life better. Meaning, when someone points out that you're wrong in something, you should take that as you should be grateful for that because they are updating your systems and telling you information that is valuable for you to live a better life, right? Any rejection of new information, while it does need to be filtered, that's going to keep you stagnant. And like we said earlier, stagnation ultimately is actually what leads to hell in a lot of ways.
And in this process of seeking the truth and accepting information from other people, having humility, you need to be able to think, right? But thinking is rare. And true thinking is rare, and so is true listening. Most of us have not actually developed this ability to think because not because we can't, but because it is extremely difficult. And a lot of times we confuse different types of thinking, right? So you're probably wondering, okay, what is thinking? This is going to sound crazy. You're going to be like, no, that's insanity. But creating multiple personas, personalities who can truly argue for a given point of view against your other personas. Simply put, it's like when you're thinking, you truly are having a debate, an argument in your mind. Like you're truly, I guess, in a way, talking to yourself and having these different, I guess, personalities hold an idea and then try to argue why that idea is right. And you must think and listen to each point of view, but you have to let the true winner prevail. Again, this is very difficult, but it is possible. And most of us begin with an idea we wish was true and then argue for it, thinking this is thinking. That's funny. But I really do want to repeat this because this really hit me when I read it again.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us most of us begin with an idea we wish was true and then argue for it. This is not thinking though. We think this is thinking, but this is not thinking. And so thinking thoroughly means that you're considering all possible options and deciding the best one, but you aren't going in with a bias to what the best one might be.
And so he talks about this is a really interesting idea to me. What's he poses the idea that conversation, specifically listening, is thinking. And so we're going to emphasize listening more. But think about when you're in conversation with someone, what you're doing is as they're speaking, you give them valuable feedback on what they're saying, right? You give there's facial expressions, body language, verbal cues, tonality, right? All these things that when the person says something, they're kind of throwing it out there, and then you yourself, the listener, you're giving them hints as oh, that's stupid, that's no, you're too angry about that, it doesn't even make any sense. And so what you're actually doing is you're allowing the person who's speaking to get feedback on what they're saying, and that is a form of thinking. And it is actually, for most people, the only way that they can think. Most people cannot create multiple personas and have them pit different ideas against each other and then choose the best one, right? They need someone else, someone with them, to listen to them and have that background, that feedback telling them, no, your idea is dumb, it's good, or it's bad, right? That feedback is really what produces thinking. And so, furthermore, listening to someone is what produces a meaningful conversation, right? So, as the thinker, is saying words, it that person gets feedback and they're creating new knowledge. They're discovering new things, right? And the listener who's just giving their reactions for free, they get free information from the speaker. And that produces meaning because, as we talked about in a past episode, meaning is having one foot in order and one foot in chaos and discovering new information, which is what's happening here, right? You're discovering new information about a situation, a person, thing, place, whatever it is. And then you both get new knowledge and you can use that going forward. And furthermore, you actually get really good social connection, right? Because the thinker feels like the listener has understood them, and vice versa. A lot of times conversations are two ways, right? So the thinker and the listener flip, and then both people feel like they've been understood, have discovered new information, and made an emotional connection with the other person.
And most of us know that not every conversation we'll have, really, most conversations aren't going to be meaningful, right? And so they're rare. And a lot of times, instead of truly listening, we one, assert our place in the dominance hierarchy. So this is often people telling, funny stories that are more likely off topic because they weren't actually listening or just saying something interesting. And then jockeying for position just to show how wonderful or intriguing your life is. This is that person that always wants to talk about their amazing, extravagant weekend when you guys were not even bringing it up,
No one cares.
right? And two is to attain victory or, win in this quote unquote battle to show that your point of view is correct. And this is another form of asserting your position in the hierarchy. So this is denigrating or ridiculing the other people's point of view that hold maybe contrary positions. And then this is using selective evidence while you're doing this. So a lot of times you will have an argument, but you only pick the evidence that's going to support you, knowing that there's other things that might contradict it. And so, but finally, this is someone just trying to impress the listener to how smart they are because they know all these things about this certain topic, right? But this is not true comprehension. No one's really learning anything. And these are other types of conversation, and there's other types of conversations that are covered in the book as well that aren't like real meaningful conversations. But a lot of times we all can spot when we're having like that deep, that not even just deep but meaningful, and a lot of times that does correlate to deep. But a true conversation kind of has, I guess, three aspects to it. Is people are given the opportunity to speak, people are truly listened to, and the goal is often to allow the speaker to think, like Ben mentioned, and by having a listener or to solve and discuss a problem together. And to repeat, a true conversation has three aspects to it. People are given the opportunity to speak, people are truly listened to, and the goal is often to allow the other person to think by having you as a listener or to solve, discuss a problem together.
The very last thing we're going to talk about is how to listen. So we talked about kind of like listening is important for conversation. It gives meaning to conversation, but we often don't do it. So how do we listen? An easy method that Peterson talks about is actually something we've talked about in a previous episode recently and Never Split the Difference. Just summarize what the other person has said, right? So when someone gives an experience, they talk about what has happened to them, take whatever it is that they're experiencing and try to give it back to them in a few sentences, and that's going to be very helpful because um, first off, it's very helpful for the person hearing your summary to hear a concise synthesis of their thoughts. And then, second off, it shows the person that you're actually listening. And then, thirdly, it gives them a chance to rectify whatever mistakes you might have made in your summary, or say that that's good, right? And then you kind of both come to a consensus of what has actually happened. And that's good because that further creates new knowledge, right? So, a quick reminder. So that's just an easy method, but a quick reminder with listening. Listening requires humility. You actually have to believe that the person speaking has something to offer. And then through that, the speaker is actually thinking. Listening is actually thinking. A conversation is thinking. Finally, a quote from Jordan Peterson. So listen to yourself and to those with whom you are speaking. Your wisdom then consists not of the knowledge you already have, but the continual search for knowledge, which is the highest form of wisdom. Assume the person you're listening might know something you don't.
Wow. And I mean, these were probably my three favorite Rules.
Yeah, I think they're especially the pursue what is meaningful, not expedient, and then also like don't lie, at least don't lie.
Yeah.
Those are the best for me.
I think, and again, I really do believe these rules stack up on each other. And the way I see it to happen is that pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient, right? So delay gratification. Focus on doing things that are meaningful, meaning that you are trying to do something bigger and better than just yourself and fulfilling some desire that you may have, but thinking long term, thinking in the future, right? But in order to be able to pursue something that is meaningful, in order to be able to actually pursue something in the future that you may deem meaningful, is you have to tell the truth. You have to be truthful to yourself. You have to be truthful with the people around you, or else if you know, bend reality and everything, you're creating fabrics in reality. You begin to live in lies. You begin to live in parallel universes that really aren't what you want, right? And that truth that you think you set really is just filled with lies. So you want to tell the truth to be able to discover what is meaningful and actually walk the path of meaning. And then last, what is it? Last is that you assume that the other person you're listening might know something you don't. And so the way I see this all connecting and tying this back is that in that road to finding the truth is that you have to understand that you don't know everything and that you don't know what may be true for everything that you know presumably have in your mind, right? And like Aristotle says, the reason why he believes, I can't remember the quote exactly, but the reason why he's smart is because he knows the reason the reason why he can understand things, or the reason why he's smart, is because he knows he's not smart, and he knows he doesn't like know things, right? He doesn't know everything. And so by one, figuring out what you want to be meaningful, right? Pursuing that meaning, you have to tell the truth. And then you also have to be open-minded to hear that everyone around you might be able to help bring you closer to that truth. And that's just the way I see all three of them connecting, and they like really do add to each other.
Definitely. I think a different way to kind of look at it, this is how I look at it. It's just a different perspective from Mel, but saying the same thing is that the sum of all of these rules is greater than, like, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, right? So I wouldn't say the order of any one is necessarily important, but if you start with one, of course there's some that kind of preclude others, but if you start with one, just focus on one and keep developing them. By the time you get to, even rule 5, honestly, or just getting 5 rules down, you'll be living a greater life than you ever thought you could, in my opinion. And if you get to really master as best as possible, of course you can't master these rules perfectly, because then you'd be Jesus. But and of course there's even more rules, honestly. He has another book, actually. But when you master these rules, then they all coalesce together to create something that is greater than any one rule implemented would give you in your life. So that's how I see it. I hope that'll make sense. Also, I'd like to say that these ideas are really, really hard to explain. The way he explains them in the book requires a lot of like prerequisite knowledge in the introduction and as he builds throughout the book. So just know this is like, these ideas are difficult to distill and then explain in a way that is not the way he explains them, which is I know I had some trouble at some parts, just kind of like giving a really good synthesis. And so if you're wondering why, that is why. I just felt like somewhat inadequate at some parts of the podcast in explaining.
We are definitely inadequate explaining this. Only Jordan Peterson himself can really, put this justice. So check out his, lectures. We'll try to link it. I'll try to remember to add it. But you guys know what time it is.
My favorite part of the episode, a quote or quotes. From Amelicus Melius.
Got to do it every time.
Every time.
But no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. Carl, how do you say his last name?
Jung.
Carl Jung. No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell.
Real quick, what that means, we went over it. You have to confront evil, confront Satan, confront your capability for doing terrible things, understanding that you would like to do them, and then choose not to do them. Sorry. I just wanted to emphasize
definitely
that.
needed that. Definitely need that explanation because some people might interpret it different ways, and it's good, you have your interpretation, but it really does tie into what we were talking about earlier. Last but not least, Jesus. That is the archetypal story of the man who gives his all for the sake of the better, who offers up his life for the advancement of being, who allows God's will to become manifest fully within the confines of a single mortal life. That is the model for the honorable man, Jordan Peterson, right? So making those sacrifices, we cannot be Jesus, but we can pursue to want to live a life that is honorable, that is full of truth, that is open to hearing others and learning. And yeah, that's really all I have to say.
That's all I got.
With all that being said, you guys, thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe. Definitely, a lot of information packed together. We have one more episode. Stick with us. One more episode.
One more.
And then you guys are going to get hit with some long discussions about this book.
Long discussions.
Long discussions. So with all that being said, make sure you guys check out all the links down below. We appreciate y'all. Till next time. Peace.